Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back to the TeamIslas podcast, episode 21. My name is Doug Bush, and today I'm joined by
Patricia Islas
and
Zach Shear.
And this is the podcast for anyone looking to better themselves in percussion education. Today we're answering a great listener question that came in. Normally we get all these questions, wonderful, we just shoot an email back, but this one was one that we felt was worth diving deeper into and doing an entire episode on. And the crux of this question was a young educator is very excited and to work hard and develop a strong culture for their percussion program, and was running into some obstacles because the head director they were working with was not necessarily interested in developing that same level of culture with the band. And so the question was essentially like, how do I go about developing this strong percussion culture that is part of a larger band culture that maybe isn't vertically aligned with my thoughts? So I don't know. What do you guys think?
Something, we didn't actually talk about this pre-recording, but I just wrote it down. I don't think you can develop that. You can't create that out of thin air, right? I want to have a successful percussion culture, especially if you have the challenge that you're creating it inside of a larger band culture that's not great. You need a frame of reference, and you probably also need someone else, like a mentor, that can kind of tell you how you're doing, So if I just think about this for me personally, I had the privilege of student teaching with Jeff Osdemore and just kind of being a fly on the wall when he was at Colleyville and just watching this culture, right? And I remember a specific conversation where, we were up there at like 8 o'clock on a Tuesday or whatever. And these kids are like, marching around the track and painting the floor and doing all these things, right? It's like working really hard. And I remember kind of just thinking man, they're having a great time. They're so into this. How does this happen? And I remember I had a conversation with Jeff where he basically told me it's to the point now that this is a big identifier of who they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? They identify, if they introduce themselves to you on the street, they would say, "Hi, my name is Zach and I'm a percussionist at Colleyville Heritage High School." It might be the first thing they tell you about themselves. I say all that just to say I had that as a frame of reference going into the place I then landed and trying to develop that. I at least knew where am I trying to go? So that would be my first recommendation if you find yourself in this situation and you haven't experienced that, or you don't have a North Star that you're pointing to, man, find it. Email that guy, call that guy that's down the road or across wherever, that you have a lot of respect for what they do, and find out how they do it and why they do it and what mistakes they made that maybe you can avoid. Invite them to come in and give you some recommendations. I think that's very helpful, instead of just trying to do it all on your own. You shouldn't try to, and it probably won't work to try to do it all on your own.
I would suggest being very patient. It isn't the kind of thing that you can just overnight, at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of the semester, drop on the kids, we're going to change all of these things. I'm going to require you be at such and such rehearsals, or that you participate in these things that you haven't been required to participate in before. For those things, you're going to get a lot of pushback at first. So I would suggest being very open with the students, not just dropping something on top of them, explaining what you're doing, what the expectation is, and why it's valuable up front, so that at least that's set in place. But then only asking for little tiny things at first. I mean, you want them to be on board with you all of the way through the process, or else it's never going to happen for you. They need to commit to it just as much as you're committing to it. And so small, tiny successes at first then can be built upon year after year, or with activity to activity, and you're going to find that they follow along with you a lot more successfully.
Yeah, and like Miss Islas likes to say, you're not even necessarily in the business whatever your business is, you're not necessarily in that as much as you're just in the business of navigating relations with other humans or people, right? So it can, you need to be aware of the things that are within your control and the things that are without your control. And in this situation, it can be very easy to feel frustrated as you're trying to develop this culture if you feel like you're having difficulties with your head director or the other band print, right? But you don't have any control over that head director and the decisions they make. You have very minimal influence, right? So don't be careful how much time you're willing to dump into that. But you have 100% control over how you decide to respond to it, right? And I can remember sometimes working early in the working relationship with Mr. Shearer, where I witnessed fairly what I think most reasonable people would call like unreasonable things being presented to Mr. Shearer. And I many times saw him just remain completely calm, completely poised, handle the situation with grace. And it was so impressive to me because I knew to myself how difficult that would be. And Mr. Shearer was in these situations, focusing on the things that were within his control and trying to make the best of the situation, and then trying to create the best environment for the students. So again, as you're kind of like navigating these more difficult things, consider ways of communicating with the other humans you're working with. I think as Matthew McConaughey says, there's the whole like treat others the way you wish to be treated. I would challenge you to treat your coworkers better than you expect to be treated. Like, don't, worry more about the energy you're putting out and a little less about the energy that's coming back at you. Like, not everything is a personal offense. If it's like you had that thing scheduled, you had that special percussion concert on the Thursday of April, whatever, blah, 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 and now it's got moved because of a dance recital a week ago, good. Cool. This is a challenge to how can we box stuff up? How can we do this? How can we do that? Look at it as an opportunity for growth rather than, because if not, you're going to get worn thin real quick and it's going to be hard to develop a culture, period.
A phrase I like, Mr. Bush, is anytime I'm confronted with a difficult relationship, especially if it's a professional one, is I decide that I'm going to kill them with kindness. Right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe the person who posed this question, like maybe they get along great with the head director.
Yeah.
They just have very different like educational philosophies. I don't know. But I do know that a lot of the band programs I've been around, or percussion directors I've talked to, or band directors I've talked to, sometimes we don't all get along great.
Yeah.
Sometimes those relationships are difficult. So I just decide I'm going to kill them with kindness. I also think it's important to decide that you're going to do your job a certain way for you, regardless of who the head director is or isn't, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a good opportunity for personal growth. I also have a few things, like if I found myself in this situation tomorrow at a school, what are some practical things I would try to do immediately? So I would try to, and this is the language I'm using here among friends. I would not use this language if I was talking to the band director, right? I would try to gain control over as many teaching environments and just anytime I have interaction with the students, whether that's a contest or teaching, whatever, I would try to gain as much control over those environments as I possibly can. How do you do that? Because you can't just walk into this director's office that clearly doesn't see things the way you do and say, I want more control, right? That's not going to work. So here are some examples. During my time at Capel, I slowly got to the point where by the end, every solo contest we did, whether it was 6th grade all the way through 12th grade, whether it was like an ensemble thing or bringing in judges or it's just us or whatever, UIL, just something we create, those all, we kind of got to the point where I had complete control over them. They were at the building I wanted them to be at. They were at the time, on the day, with the judges and the structure and the trophies, everything exactly the way I wanted it to be. Now, I didn't get that by going and saying, hey, I don't like the way you guys are doing this, and I don't think it's the best environment for my students, so I'm going to take my toys and go somewhere else. That's not how I did it. And actually, a lot of the way they did solo contest that I kind of pulled out of wasn't necessarily bad. I just wanted to do something different, right? So I found myself going to band directors and saying things like, hey, you know what? We just finished solo contest. And by the way, I was there all day and worked real hard and helped out, right? But now here we are post the event is over, and I'm saying things like, man, I know we have a lot of kids and it's really crowded, and I know we're struggling for rooms and accompanists and this and that, and we can't ever get the air on at this school, and it's hot and whatever, right? You had to make all the sheets and get all the trophies. Would it help you if I took a little bit of that off your plate? And I took the percussion to a separate campus. You don't have to worry about moving equipment. I'll take care of the trophies. You don't have to make the sheets, whatever. I'm posing this in a way that makes it, like, what I'm saying to that other colleague is, let me make this better and easier for you. And when you do that, people say, oh man, thank you.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yes, thank you. So if you can find ways to get things more under your control, you're going to have a chance to build that culture you want to build, but you got to present it to the people you work with in a way that makes it better for them. And genuinely, it's good. It's good to make it. It's not a trick,
Yeah,
right?
no. It's not a
But
trick.
there is an art to, like,
Yeah.
I'm sharing with them part of what I'm doing, just not all, right?
Yeah.
Like, I am genuinely making it better for them. It's
Yeah.
not a trick, but I'm not coming out and just saying, I want to do things my way, not your way.
Yeah.
You know?
Going back to those building the negotiation skills.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
because it is a
yes.
problem that you're trying to solve, and you want whoever it is you're discussing it with to feel like they're in it with you to solve said problem.
Yep.
And you're going to get some stuff out of it, and your job is to convince them that they're also going to get some stuff out of it.
Yep.
And if both parties can walk away feeling that they got something out of the change, adjustment, whatever, then you're more likely to be able to have success doing that in the future with said person.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Bush.
I was just going to pivot to kind of talking about aiming more towards the students.
Oh, sure.
So yeah, okay. So an actionable thing in terms of like trying to develop this culture with the students that you can apply when maybe the greater band culture isn't quite as developed as you would like. A trick that I've used over the years many times to great success is to talk to the drumline or the bass line or whatever section in a sense of like communicating to them, hey, if this was the military, we are aiming to be the special forces of it. Right? Anyone for the most part at the right age, whatever, can sign up to be a part of the Navy, and the Navy needs everyone. Like, they need everyone to do all kinds of stuff, but only very few even get the opportunity to be a SEAL, and of them, very, very few actually make it all the way, right? And then that is what the Navy can point to as like the pinnacle elite of our organization. This is the best of the best, right? And so that's how I pitch it to the students also, is like, that is what we are trying to be. Because, when you're 14 and you're being asked to be silent and still in rehearsal, but then the trombone players aren't being silent or still. When you're 14 and you're being asked to show up with all your music memorized, but the trumpet players aren't showing up with their music memorized. When you're 14, you've never worn a drum or hold, Jeff Osmore outdoor drumsticks that are the size of your forearm, or had to like march at 180. You've never even marched until a week ago, right? And now you're being yelled at to run back to your set, and it's 102 degrees, and the flutes, who their instrument weighs nothing, are casually strolling back to the set. Why should you run, right? These are all like really good examples, actual examples of where you want to reframe it as like, this is good. This is opportunity for us to lead by example, right? Like to be, I have a friend that, funny enough, in the Navy, that was on submarines for many, many years. And he would talk to me about like the assignments and missions where SEALs would show up, and how like you had this almost mythological idea of what they were like. And then every time they showed up, they like lived up to that expectation. They were like up before everyone. They were, he would talk about like sometimes standing next to the guy and looking at him and being like, I can't even believe we're part of the same thing. Right? And, that has to feel really good too for the SEALs in that situation. It gives them a chance to kind of live up to that, And so that's how you can start to build that culture, is right. I think that, one of the things at Coppell, that's why we see so much excitement from the younger students to come in, is they know, they have a legendary view of what the varsity thing is before they've actually ever experienced it. And that is only exist because of the culture that was created, like, as you said, there specifically with that, and implementing those values, right?
Yeah, I think you touched on something there too with that of giving the students a model of what's possible. You know, it's one thing for you to tell them that playing better is going to be more fun, or even to demonstrate your own playing, like playing a marimba solo for them, or drumming some really cool stuff that they can't do yet. But taking them live and in person to see students their same age doing things like you envision them doing is a whole different experience. I'm sure we can all point to in our music education moments that stood out for us, and that performances that we saw of other kids doing what we didn't even know was possible, that then inspired us to do some great things. So taking them to, you know, a local percussion ensemble festival, or take them to see drum corps, or, you know, even certain individuals, bringing them to solo competitions that are outside of their school, where they're getting to witness other players from other places doing things that they probably haven't seen before if they're on their own little world. I mean, we have access to so much through our phones, but that doesn't mean necessarily that we're going out and watching every single possible thing that's out there. So seeing it live and in person and going like, hey, this is really cool, and this is why I think this is really cool, and this is why I'm excited about it, will help to inspire them to have a reason to show up a little earlier, or do that extra practice, or take on that extra responsibility.
Yeah. You know, kind of back to your how to negotiate with our colleagues, Miss Islas, I wrote down a few things here. Smile and nod, right? And smile and don't talk. Like, just listen more than you talk. And I know, like, I can definitely think of times where I just adapted this mindset of like, okay, if it's not something that negatively impacts the percussion section, I'm just not going to get involved. I don't really have an opinion on it. I'm not going to get involved. Not only do I not have time to get involved in these things, but like, I don't want to expend any of my personal capital with my colleagues on something that actually doesn't help the percussion section. So like, sometimes I get in conversations with these percussion teachers, and it's like, it becomes clear to me they're very involved in like all of this other stuff that's, you know, whatever the color of the flags and the this and the that. And I'm like, I don't know if that's the best use of your time and energy, and also just your personal, like, I don't know, capital with your colleagues. So I'm smiling and nodding and keeping my mouth shut a lot. I'm picking my battles. And when it comes time to do things that we have to do with the band, UIL or what, you know, not solo contest, but like the concert band stuff or whatever else I have to do, I am going to do it really well. I'm going to over deliver on those things. Like, even if I maybe don't have a great relationship with the head director, or the quality of the end product that the Winds are putting out is not good, I'm still going to make sure I'm really doing my job very well. And then just another environment that comes to mind that I know can be very successful, where you can kind of gather your tribe and do your thing and develop your culture, is a middle school percussion camp. I know the middle school directors I worked with were very thankful when I was like, oh, you need them to learn Hey Baby or the fight song or whatever. We're going to have a middle school percussion camp, and we're going to learn that.
We'll make sure we get that done.
We'll make sure we get that done. Now, little did they know, I was rewriting it to be just quarter notes and eighth notes or whatever, so we only had to spend 5 minutes on it. But we were doing this middle school percussion camp where we were doing all these other really cool things that started to develop our culture separate from the band culture. I think that's great. The last thing I would say is, even though it might seem that way, the grass is not always greener at another program. You might be looking down the road at a program where the winds are amazing, and every gig has its challenges. You know, if you get into a situation where the winds are amazing, there might be pressure to make sure the percussion section is living up to that. Or every gig comes with its own challenges. And so I wouldn't run away from your job if you're like, I'm updating my resume and I'm out of here. You know, that's not necessarily the right answer. But at a certain point, if in consultation with your mentors or other people in your life, it comes to that point, then it might be. It might be the right answer to leave. That's okay too. You know?
I don't, and it's very tricky, obviously, and you need to know you, I think, is the first step of that. Like, what are your values? Like, going into a situation, there needs to be the assumption that it is not going to be perfect, flawless, idyllic, right? So if you had to choose between someone you genuinely enjoyed working with and put a smile on your face, and you loved, getting dinner with or getting a drink with after, and hanging out. But maybe they're not the best teacher, or maybe their standard doesn't meet yours, or this or that, it causes difficulty on the educational side. Versus B, someone that maybe you don't get super along with, right, at a personal level. But they're an incredible educator that's teaching at the highest level. Which of these two scenarios would you find more enjoyment being a part of or working with, right? So it's like Mr. Shear was just saying, the grass isn't always greener, but sometimes it is, right? And so
Sorry.
Does that help?
I know. So to give you a more concrete thing, I guess my personal suggestion, Miss Islas and I are so fortunate. I mean, I don't know if anyone else can really speak to this the way we can, of getting to see inside so many different band halls from so many different programs, from so many different high-level educators. And so being able to clearly be detached enough to clearly see what things were working, what weren't, what struggles this group had that other groups didn't have, what advantages this group had that other groups had. And that level of perspective gave us just such incredible, invaluable insight, right, to bring with us. And so with that being said, the two pieces of advice I would give you would, number one, reach out and speak with other directors.
Yep.
Like you need to make friends in this community of directors, and that are going to be open and honest with you about how's their middle school band director start rehearsal, or what is their when they want to do a drumline contest in a different city, how does their head band director respond to that? All those type of things. That's number one. So you have a good, accurate read of what is actually happening in other places, not your mythological view from where you are of what you assume is happening. That's like number one. But then number two is, in almost every situation, I would say you need to give it at least a couple years. Do not just jump immediately because things feel icky. Islas and I have said for years now, because we've seen it in practice, on average, it takes about 5 years to develop a program. And by develop, I mean you show up and maybe you have 2 kids auditioning for front ensemble. Most of your high school students don't know their major scales or struggle to read music. Like, to get that to, we're one of the strongest percussion schools in the area, takes 5 years of hard work.
Yeah.
So if you go in another place that's more developed, it might only take 3, it might only take 4, but it's not going to happen in 1. And it's not going to happen in 2, and maybe only the most amazing circumstances would it happen as quickly as 3. So that would be my one piece of advice is try to hang in there. But at the end of 3 or 4 years, if you're still feeling pretty icky, it's probably time to look for another place.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All good things.
All right. Thanks for hanging out with us today, friends. If you have any questions for the podcast, send them to TeamIslas@gmail.com. That's TeamIslas, TeamIslas @gmail.com. Shout out to all the great percussion companies that support Team Islas. This is Mapex Majestic Percussion, Dynasty Percussion, Remo Drumheads, ProMark Sticks and Mallets, Sabian Cymbals, Beetle Percussion, and Lot Riot Apparel. To help develop your strong percussion culture, there are so many resources we have available for you to check out. Multiple best-selling books, from The Player's Guide for your beginning percussionists to Momentum for your mallet players, Super Hands for your snare drummers, Opening Statement if you're looking for beginning and intermediate snare solos for your solo contest. Miss Islas, where can you purchase all these materials?
Well, you can find all of them at TeamIslas.com.
Yeah, TeamIslas.com, Steve Weiss, anywhere that you buy your music from, you should be able to grab a copy of any of these. Awesome. You get a chance, please leave us that 5-star review. Remember, friends, step 1 is timing, step 2 is sound, step 3, subscribing to the Team Islas podcast.